So you're an investment advisor. Like, I didn't really learn about the different roles at the bank or like the financial institutions. So like, when should somebody work with an investment advisor versus a certified financial planner versus, you know, a mutual funds advisor, or, you know?
Yeah. Well, I would lump the mutual fund advisors and, you know, CFPs together, because as I mentioned earlier, CFPs, they use mutual funds.
Yes.
Right? That's their toolbox. Again, if you're young, you're starting out, your life circumstances are very simple. You really don't, if you're single and you have just by yourself, you really, your situation is not complex, right? So working with a financial planner or myself, we can't really add much value to you.
Okay.
Right? So you can literally DIY it, put in an index fund and call it a day.
Yeah.
Right? It's where I add value is if you have, you know, kids, families, and you know, to start thinking about 20 years from now, what you want to do with your money, or retirement, or passing on to the kids, or charities, foundations, trusts. That's where I add value, right? So that's where I say, okay, well, that's 30-year game plan. You want to give it to a specific charity or foundation. One, how do we do it in a way where it's tax efficient? How do I grow your money in the next 30 years? What tool we use? What accounts we use? How do we structure it properly so that you don't get hit with tax liability at the end? That's where I add value.
Okay. And so you talk about like tax efficiency. So how are you different from like a tax accountant?
Well, the tax accountant is someone I would work closely with.
Oh, okay.
Like I would give a high level about what the numbers look like.
The overall strategy kind of.
Yeah, the overall strategy. But if you want to go into the details and the policies and laws and regulations, that's where the accountant comes into play.
I see.
Right? So I can go with the numbers, but the policies and everything, that's where the accountant is valuable.
Ah, okay. So you're more like the strategist in terms of tax. You like someone cannot be, you're like not a tax lawyer or a tax accountant, but you can provide basic tax, kind of like what like real estate individuals like me, like I can provide general tax information, but I don't want to say like, oh yeah, I learned about tax from Gary. Like, we're not accountants, so we can't say that, right? So I guess that's similar, right?
It's a similar, and I would say I work with, and I'm sure you do too, with accountant to double check the numbers, of course, the more detailed calculations, because they would know better than I do.
Because individual investors have individual situations.
Exactly.
Like you can provide a general strategy, but that general strategy might not apply to that investor if they have multiple holdings and trusts and all these things, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So like, would you say, is there a certain like minimum wealth level that they need to be, like people need to be before they work with an investment advisor like you, or like, oh, I need to have X amount in wealth, or I need to be, you know?
I personally don't say that, hey, you need a minimum of X amount. I always look at, you can start young, and I can have a plan for you for 30 or 40 years, but I would very much so like to grow with you and work on that plan with you for the next 30 to 40 years. So I don't look at, okay, how much you have today. I look at how much I can help you get to in 30, 40 years, right? So start young. It's kind of like my advice.
Yeah, because like I still know some investment advisors in the industry, and they're like, oh, you know, to work with me, you need to have $500,000 in investable assets, or you need to have like, you know, $250,000 or $1 million or something like that. It's like, oh, okay, I'll talk to them later, like, you know. But I guess like it doesn't have to be like that, you know.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be, and I mean everybody's model is different, right? My model is I want to work with loyal clients, have that relationship. So if you've been with me when you first started and we've been together for 20 years, chances of you leaving to another person, very highly unlikely, unless I'm dead, right? So I prefer that loyalty and that relationship I have versus, hey, I want the biggest fish out in the sea. Like, so is everybody else.
Exactly.
Right? So how I distinguish myself is play the long game.